Jordan Peterson built his entire career telling other people how to fix their lives. Millions bought his books and millions more watched his lectures online. He became the most influential psychologist on the internet. But something started shifting around 2022. Twitter suspended him. YouTube pulled his ad revenue. Cambridge had already rejected him overnight. And then his own profession came after him. The College of Psychologists of Ontario ordered him into mandatory coaching. He fought it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada and lost. The man who made a fortune teaching people to stand up straight was now struggling to stand his own ground. Jordan Peterson was born on June 12, 1962 in Edmonton, Alberta, but his real story begins in a much smaller place. Fairview was a quiet town where life moved slow and expectations stayed simple. His parents were not political firebrands or rebels. They were steady, grounded people who believed in education. His mother Beverly worked as a librarian at Grande Prairie Regional College, surrounded by books and ideas. His father Walter was a school teacher, calm and disciplined, carrying a sense of structure into the home. They raised him in a lightly Christian environment, nothing intense, just a soft presence of faith in the background. But something in him did not settle. Even as a child, there was a tension building, a feeling that life should be bigger, sharper, and more meaningful than what he saw around him. At just 13 years old, that tension found direction. He joined the New Democratic Party, not casually and not as a passive observer, but fully, drawn to its promises of fairness, equality, and change. At that age, most kids are still figuring out who they are, but Jordan was already thinking about systems, power, and society. By the age of 14, he was actively involved, even running for a leadership role within the party. He lost by only 13 votes, a narrow margin that said something important. He was not invisible. People noticed him. During his school years, in confirmation classes, he began asking questions. Simple ones at first, then sharper ones. Questions about Genesis, about evolution, about truth. The answers he received did not satisfy him. They felt weak and avoidant, and slowly that quiet background faith disappeared. He walked away from it not with hesitation but with certainty, replacing belief with reason, with logic, and with a desire to understand the world without illusion. So there he was, a teenager who believed in political revolution, but rejected religion entirely. That combination shaped everything that came next. When he finished high school in 1979, he did not go straight into psychology. Instead, he chose political science and English literature at Grande Prairie Regional College. He was still chasing ideas about power, systems, and society, and there was also a practical goal driving him. He wanted stability. He wanted success. He even imagined becoming a corporate lawyer, someone sharp and powerful who could navigate complex systems and come out on top. Then something unexpected happened. During his time in college, he came across George Orwell's The Road to Wiganpio, and it did not just interest him. It shook him. The book exposed something uncomfortable, showing how people who claimed to fight for equality were sometimes driven by resentment rather than compassion. It revealed how ideology could twist good intentions into something darker, and that hit him hard because it reflected parts of his own thinking. The political certainty he had carried since his teenage years began to crack. After completing his degree in political science in 1982, he left Canada for a year and traveled across Europe. He visited places marked by history's darkest moments, sites connected to war, to suffering, to systems that had gone terribly wrong. He stood in places where ideology had turned into destruction, and that led him to a deeper question. How does this happen? How do ordinary people become part of something so destructive? That question stayed with him. It followed him back home and pushed him in a new direction. Political science no longer felt enough. It explained systems but not the human mind behind them. So he made a decision that most people would not make. He started over, went back to university, and pursued a second degree, this time in psychology. By 1984, he had completed it, and his focus was now clear. He wanted to understand the mind, not just behavior, but the deeper structures, the fears, the motivations, and the hidden patterns that drive people toward order or chaos. That path led him to McGill University, where his work became more focused and more intense. He began studying alcoholism not just as a habit, but as a pattern tied to deeper psychological structures. He focused on sons of alcoholic fathers and found something striking. Even when sober, many of them struggled with tasks that required planning and flexible thinking. Their responses to stress were heightened, their systems already strained. Alcohol, instead of simply harming them, seemed to calm that internal chaos in the short term, which made it more dangerous because it did not just damage them. It rewarded them. That insight mattered. It showed how vulnerability could be built into a person long before destructive behavior became visible. By the early 1990s, his academic path took him to Harvard, a major step and a place known for its intensity and competition. But something interesting happened there. He did not become just another professor. His lectures stood out. Students did not just attend. They listened closely, and many described his classes as transformative. They were not just learning theories. They were being pulled into deeper questions about meaning, responsibility, and belief. After Harvard, he moved to the University of Toronto, where his life became even more intense. He balanced teaching with clinical practice, seeing around 20 patients a week. Real people with real problems involving aggression, addiction, and anxiety. He was no longer just studying theories. He was sitting across from people dealing with the consequences of those inner struggles, and that changed the way he spoke. His lectures became more grounded and more urgent. He began recording them, long sessions on personality, on myths, on meaning, and slowly people outside the university started paying attention. Peterson's first book, Maps of Meaning, The Architecture of Belief, came out in 1999, and it became the foundation of almost everything that followed. In it, he pulled together psychology, mythology, religion, literature, and neuroscience to explain how people make sense of life through stories. For Peterson, myths were never just old tales. They were tools that helped people face chaos, fear, and uncertainty. The struggle between chaos and order became the center of his entire worldview. In 2013, he launched his YouTube channel. At first it looked like little more than a storage shelf for old lectures. But starting in 2014, he began uploading recordings of university courses, and those lectures, which had been sitting around for years, suddenly became available to anyone in the world. People searching for psychology, meaning, or deeper discussions about life would stumble onto them and stay, watching one, then another, then another. By August 2018, the channel had more than 1.8 million subscribers and over 65 million views, remarkable numbers for dense lectures, long interviews, and serious debates. Peterson's growth was not built on short viral moments. It was built on hours-long material that people returned to again and again, and once the algorithms noticed that, his reach expanded even further. Then came the turning point that changed his public life forever. In September 2016, he uploaded a series of videos attacking Canada's proposed Bill C-16, describing it as a dangerous move toward compelled speech. He argued the law could force him to use gender-neutral pronouns, and he refused to accept that. What might have stayed a narrow legal debate exploded almost overnight into something much larger. One professor, one set of videos, and one piece of legislation were now being discussed all over the world. Legal scholars argued that the bill did not criminalize ordinary pronoun mistakes and was designed to address discrimination and hate, not to police everyday language in the dramatic way Peterson described. But his fame was already growing from that interpretation, and the backlash on campus was intense and chaotic. There were protests, counter-rallies, signs, shouting, and physical confrontations. The debate stopped being just about law or policy. It became a fight over free speech, identity, and power, and it was happening entirely in public with Peterson at the center. By the time Bill C-16 passed in 2017, Peterson had already crossed into a different level of fame. Then came 2018's 12 Rules for Life, which sold more than 10 million copies worldwide and topped bestseller lists across the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and beyond. The timing mattered. The book arrived at a moment when many people felt lost, overwhelmed, and unsure of what to trust. Peterson offered something that felt direct and strong, a mix of psychology, mythology, and blunt advice about discipline, suffering, and how to live. He then took that message on the road with a world tour covering 45 cities across North America, Europe, and Australia, drawing more than 200,000 people, with many venues selling out. His audiences were no longer just those interested in academic debates. Huge numbers of young men in particular were showing up because they wanted structure, meaning, and direction. His live events began to feel less like lectures and more like rallies built around personal transformation. But the higher he rose, the harder the backlash hit. A Cambridge visiting fellowship was withdrawn after photos appeared showing him beside someone wearing a hateful anti-Islam shirt. Twitter suspended him in 2022 after a tweet about actor Elliot Page, and YouTube demonetized 2 of his videos for violating hateful content policies. He became increasingly vocal about climate change in ways that scientists described as deeply misleading, drawing criticism that he was speaking with confidence well outside his area of expertise. He stepped away from the University of Toronto in late 2021, became chancellor of a college in 2022 before stepping down in 2025, helped launch the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship in 2023, and then in 2024 unveiled Peterson Academy, an online education project built with his daughter Michaela and aimed at offering a cheaper alternative to elite universities. Within a short time, it drew tens of thousands of students. He was no longer just criticizing institutions. He was trying to build replacements. Yet the College of Psychologists of Ontario kept moving forward, ordering him into mandatory coaching and ultimately winning when the courts sided with them. The legal system treated the case as a straightforward professional conduct matter, not as the sweeping free speech showdown Peterson and his supporters wanted to frame it as. That difference mattered deeply. No matter how large his audience had grown or how many institutions he had built, his public identity remained tied to a real license, real professional rules, and real consequences that no amount of popularity could simply override.